We lift up your holy name. You're worthy of all praise and glory and honor. Thank you for what you're doing, what you're going to do. I pray help us to hear what your message is for us today. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Perfect peace. You will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. It's Isaiah 26. In our current day and age, this is kind of critical. Perfect peace comes from keeping your mind stayed on him. It means that we have to keep our mind focused on him instead of all the garbage in the world. It's hard, but if we're not careful, we focus on all the garbage, and when you start focusing on that stuff, you get uptight, you get aggravated, irritated, just whatever. It's okay to recognize things in life. I mean, we have to. It's important to recognize and discuss things that are problems, but we have to do it from a point of having our mind stayed on him. And it'll make all the difference in the world. Casting all your care on him because he cares for us. See, he cares for you, so we can cast all of our cares on him. That means that we can have that perfect peace, because when something starts to rattle us, we can say, I give this to you. It's not avoiding it. It's giving it to somebody who can do something about it. People say, oh, well, we shouldn't avoid things. Well, no, it doesn't. It's not a matter of avoiding something if you're giving it to someone who can actually do something about it. As opposed to trying to do something about it yourself when you can't do anything about it. It's kind of like, what's a good example? Okay. The starter solenoid on your car is stuck.
Smack it.
If you take it to a mechanic, they can fix it pretty easy. You can take a hammer and bang on it, and it might work that time. It might not. Or you can just sit and turn the key until your battery dies. See, if we aren't giving him the things, if we aren't taking care of handing over those things that are concerning, that encroach on our peace, then it's just like we're sitting there trying to start the battery or start the car until the battery dries, or just holding it, and it doesn't do anything. Doesn't go anywhere, doesn't work, it's ineffective, and it kills the battery eventually. That's where we are when we hold on to things and fret over.
But we're doing something, right?
But we're not doing anything. See, we don't fight or struggle about anything, but keep him in the center of your vision. Keep him at the center of your heart and mind. If we keep our mind stayed on him, he will keep us in perfect peace. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be going through a struggle. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be dealing with issues or problems. It means that you'll be at perfect peace. That means that when the sea is in upheaval, you're going to be like that lighthouse that's just sitting there as a light. The sea waves beating against it get it wet, but that's it. It's at peace. Perfect peace comes from above, and if we focus on him, then we will have perfect peace. Perfect peace means without flaw. Perfect means without flaw. If we have perfect peace, then we are at peace no matter what the situation. It means that people can respond to something we say totally out of context, and our initial response is, that's not what I meant. Or we can be like, okay, that's not really what I meant. Let me explain it again. Let me say it a different way. And be calm. We can be at peace. Also, peace is contagious.
Yeah.
If we have peace,
That's right.
it can bring other people into that peace. Because peace is a fruit of the Spirit, so we can share it. we can give our peace away and not be without peace. The world's full of unpeacefulness, but we have perfect peace. If you have perfect peace, then you are a beacon to others. There will be times when people are upset that you have peace. They'll be like, why are you not upset about this? Why aren't you in a tizzy about this? Why aren't you in a struggle about this? Well, our answer to that question is because I've given it over to somebody who can deal with it. I can't do anything to fix that, but I've given it to somebody who can. And they're like, but. You know, they're like, well, I don't understand that. Well, that's all right. You don't have to understand it. That's what I've done. They'll be upset that we have peace, and they will try to steal our peace. So often people will be like, you're too peaceful. I'm going to get you stirred up and riled up and upset and aggravated and irritated, and they'll poke and prod and twist and shout and yell and pinch and try to make it so that you are upset because, face it, in the world, if somebody doesn't have peace, they don't want other people to have peace.
I had that very experience with somebody where I had the peace and they didn't understand it.
Yeah.
It was just exactly like you said.
They don't care if they have peace or not. They just know they don't have peace, and you do have peace, so they want to make sure you don't have peace either.
Mm-hmm. If I'm not happy, nobody's allowed to be happy.
Right.
Misery loves company.
Misery loves company.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Now, others, on the other hand, will be drawn to your peace, and they'll shelter in it. There will be times when you just all of a sudden notice, what are all these people doing around me? I mean, figuratively, they may not be literally around you, but, you know, it's like all these people are just like, you look behind you and you're like, I got a bunch of ducklings following me. What's going on? And it's because they're sheltering in your peace. Now, it's not our peace, but that's all right. We're sharing that peace. Mm-hmm. And we're a beacon and a light. And we can provide peace because it's a fruit of the Spirit. We can give it away freely and never run out. And we can say, here, I give you some of my peace. My peace I give to you. My peace I give to you. Here, I have some of my peace. Here, have peace. You know, happy. Now, some people look at that and go, ugh, I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
That peace that's not the kind of peace I want.
That's a piece of junk.
Mm-hmm.
No, but they'll be like, that piece is, oh, I don't want that. You can't do anything about that.
What about the people that want peace but can't figure out how to get it? They don't know how to accept it.
They don't know how to accept it.
They want it, but they don't know
Well,
how to
but
accept
you know
it.
what? I'll tell you what. Even if you keep giving somebody peace and they keep rejecting it, every time I give somebody a piece of peace and they throw it away, that's a seed that was planted somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Some peace. Oh, that was a seed that was planted. It may just be planted in that person. But eventually, it's going to rub off on them. Eventually, it'll grow. And they'll be like,
Somebody will come along and water it.
this is too consistent. This is too much the same. How is it that they're always the same? You know, eventually they'll go from going, ew, to going, what is it about this? Why do you keep giving this to me? Why is it that you have all this peace and I
That
don't?
person will take the piece and be like, and then they'll drop it or give it to somebody else or
Well,
forget
they'll
about
give
it.
it to somebody
But they'll
else,
talk
throw it
about
away.
it to somebody. This person said this to me the other day. I don't know why they said that. But
Right.
the other person down the line that they're talking to might be like, oh, well, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You know? And that piece that you
But
gave to
it'll
them
spread. It's
will
a seed.
go down the line to the next person and then they'll get what they needed.
Yep, that's true. Goes along with, you know, we can share our peace. We don't have to protect our peace from anyone else. First of all, if our mind stayed on him, then it's not our peace anyway. It's his peace. And we don't have to protect his peace. It's the fruit of the Spirit. It doesn't need protection. It doesn't need sheltering. It doesn't need covering. It doesn't need, it doesn't need us to do anything other than to accept it and share it. And see, if people try to attack our peace, all we have to do is look to the source of the peace. Now, does that mean that there'll be times when we all of a sudden realize, I don't have any peace. I'm not at peace about this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a struggle. Start freaking out. Sometimes we'll do that, and it'll take somebody else to say, "Hey, what about your peace?" Sometimes we can realize it ourselves. Oh, wait, God, I need more peace. I didn't accept the peace last time. Remember that with all of the fruits of the Spirit, the more you try to hold on to it yourself, the less you have.
But the more you revisit it though, and remember, and come back to it, it'll grow more.
Right?
It's
Yeah.
like
The
you
more
plant a
you
little tree, and then I need to revisit my peace. What did I peace about not so long ago? You go back to your peace and you'll water it, and it'll grow a little bigger. And every time you go back to it.
Well, every time you go back
More
to
patient.
just rest in that peace,
Yeah.
Right.
it'll grow. But if we find ourselves without peace, then we need to remember to go back to it. Or somebody needs to remind us. And that's all right. It happens. It's part of being normal humans. That normal human condition. Sometimes we find ourselves all of a sudden going, where am I? What have I done? I don't know where I am. I was following this thread that I needed to follow, and then all of a sudden it's gone, and I don't know what to do. But all we have to do is say Jesus. All we have to do is say, God, help me. Lord, I'm in a struggle here. Rescue me. Because it's not a sin to lose your peace. It's a sin to intentionally not have peace. Because that's sinning against God. That's against the Holy Spirit. But if you all of a sudden realize, where's my peace? That's not a sin. You just say, Jesus, help me. God, help me. God, where am I? Where are you? I turned around the wrong way. I'm lost.
Come find me again. Pick me up.
Help, 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 help. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes we get so focused on what we're working on, what we're doing, what we're thinking about, the situation that we're in the middle of. Because sometimes situations can be way overwhelming. And you're like, that's all you can see is this situation. And you're like, what do I do? Now, I will take a thought process from somebody else. If you take a decent macro lens camera, macro lets you focus in on something that's real tiny, and you go out and you find an anthill that's like this tall, and you set that camera all the way down on the ground or down a little bit lower than the anthill, and you aim it at that anthill and you focus on it, it's going to look like a big old mountain.
Not at first.
It'll look huge. It could look ginormous. And if you add a little bit of Photoshop, it can look really ginormous. But it's an anthill. You change the perspective on it, and you're like, oh, that's not a big deal.
Is it going to matter 100 years from now?
Or 10 years from now.
Yeah.
10 minutes from now.
5 years from now. I mean, if something's not going to matter 100 years from now, you can say, okay, well, what about 50 years? No. How about 10 years?
Maybe a little tiny bit.
Maybe, is it going to matter 5 years from now? It might matter a little bit, but is it enough to really be upset about? How about a year from now?
Will it matter right after I get it taken care of?
Is it going to matter, if I stop thinking about it, is it really going to matter? Some things will matter. Some things have lasting impact that we have to deal with and take care of.
Some matter.
But you have to look and say, okay, this is something that needs dealt with. But if I have peace about it, I realize that it's not something that needs to destroy my life.
Right.
It's not something that is going to have a critical impact on the rest of my life or on the future. It's something that I just need to take care of.
Right.
So you put it in perspective, you're like, okay, that's not a big deal. I can take care of that. God, you can help me take care of it. God, I give this to you because I don't know what to do with it. But you still look at that in perspective, and you're like, okay, well, this really isn't that horrendous of a situation, you know? And you can have peace about it. Whereas if you are all in knots, and you're all upset, and all tied up, and bound up, and in upheaval, you look at a situation, and you're like, I don't know what to do! And then we don't do anything. And then we stop sharing the fruits of the Spirit. And then we stop partaking in the fruits of the Spirit. Then we stop giving, and the gifts of the Spirit. And we stop accepting the gifts of the Spirit. And we find ourselves in a stagnant, dark place going,
How often is it about?
But it's because we don't have any peace.
How
We
often
don't
is
have
it
any-
about money too? A lot of times it feels like money is one of the sources of the reasons that everyone gets so stressed out about things.
Well, money is just because in this life you have to have money.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. You have to have it. It's not like you have
The
to.
Lord
always
giveth
have to
and
have
the
it.
Lord taketh away. You only have as much as He wants you to have at this moment. So
So-
if you let go of the attachment to it and you just try to be good steward of that which you are entrusted to, let Him guide your expenditure, then you shouldn't have stress about it.
It's not that you'll always have enough money.
No.
You know, usually you're like, I could use another $10 right about now.
And then it pops out of nowhere.
But then at the right time, it's there.
Find it in your laundry.
If you're trusting God. Whoa, I have 20 in my wallet.
That's right.
I found 20 in my car rolled up, almost half tucked under the floor mat in my car. Like, I don't even know how that happened, where
Wow.
it came from.
I'll tell you one time. This was
Praise God.
years and years ago, obviously. Yvonne and I, like around our first anniversary, we just went through our wedding cards, and we found a check that we didn't know was in there. And it was like, cool. So, deposit. We needed the money. It was enough to help with whatever the situation was. 2 or 3 years later, we were going through it, and we found cash. We're like, what? So the next time we need money, we're like, let's go through there. There wasn't anything there. but we look. But, God provides in odd ways that, that you just wouldn't expect.
Most strange of it.
So the point is that even if you find yourself in a situation where you're in upheaval or in a struggle, what you need to do, what we have to do really, is instead of focusing on the upheaval and the struggle, focus on the peace. It's kind of like the disciples in the boat with Jesus. They were going across the Sea of Galilee. Now, anybody who's ever been there and seen the Lake Gennesaret, which is the actual name of the Sea of Galilee.
Did I see it?
What?
Did I see the sea?
Yeah, we stayed right on it.
Oh, that's right. It was too choppy to ride that day, wasn't it?
The boat. We didn't get the boat ride because it was too choppy.
Yeah.
But it was just choppy. It wasn't stormy. But it's a narrow, long lake.
Right.
It's about 1.5 miles wide by about 5 miles long. So it's not a huge lake. I mean, we have bigger lakes in South Carolina. But it's very deep. And so when it gets a storm going, and the valley that it's in, the wind comes down. And when that wind starts coming down and hits it just right, it gets some big waves.
Right.
And some big, really choppy, and the water is really rough and really hard, and even somewhat dangerous. I mean, there's been boats sunk out there because they weren't careful and all that. So the disciples with Jesus in the boat were trying to go across the narrow part, so 1.5 miles, 2 miles. Like, okay, it shouldn't be a big deal. You had 12 people rowing a boat. They should be able to get across fast. Well, if they were going against the wind and the wind was blowing them, they were just sitting there and not making any progress in the middle of the water. They'd have been better off just letting it blow them back to shore the other way. But they didn't want to go back that way, so they kept trying to go. And Jesus wasn't worried. I mean, he could walk on water. I assume he could sleep on it too. So he was just sleeping in the boat. And they're like, "Don't you care? We're gonna die." They didn't take his peace. Get back, Godric. You're Batman on the church camera. There you go. They didn't take his peace and accept it. They saw his peace and were upset by it.
Right.
Because they weren't really into the place where they needed to be yet. And so they're like, ah! And he woke up and he said, oh, you have little faith. And he said, peace, be still. Yeah, he looked at the lake and the wind, and all of a sudden it was like, and the water stopped and went glassy smooth, and the wind stopped, and the clouds cleared up, and the sun came out, and the harp, you're the
little bird was chirping.
And they're like,
and a dove flew by with a tall branches, man.
and to top it all off, not only that, but it says, and immediately they were at the shore.
Oh, interesting.
So not only was the storm done, the journey was over, the lesson was done.
They time traveled.
Didn't even have, I mean, it was just there they were. They were there.
It's like they're battling this storm. They're like, and they're like 10 feet away from the shore.
They were already at the shore.
They just couldn't see it with the fog.
That's why they weren't moving, because they were rowing
on the
against
shore.
ground.
They were grounded already.
But the point is they weren't taking his peace.
Right.
Now, at another time when there was a big storm like that, and Jesus wasn't in the boat, they went ahead. He said, "Go ahead, I'll meet you." And they're like, "Okay, how are you going to do that?" But okay. And they thought, well, maybe he's got some other boat he's going to take. But Peter looks out and says, "I see somebody walking, and it looks like God. Jesus, is that you? If it's you, call me out there." That would be Peter.
Of course, Jesus called him.
And Jesus said, "Come on." So Peter's like, all right, steps out of the boat, starts walking, starts thinking, starts looking, starts sinking.
Drowning.
He's like, help me. And again, immediately they were in the boat. Jesus grabbed him and they were in the boat. And he said, what? See, as long as Peter held on to Jesus' faith and Jesus' peace, he was all right. But as soon as he started leaning on his own understanding, I can't walk on water, I sink in water. That was his understanding. This is a problem. Then he started sinking. See, if we have our mind stayed on him, we'll be at perfect peace. And when you're at perfect peace, things just happen.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when bad things happen, it's like, whatever.
When you're in perfect peace, you can kind of see the storm around you without being affected by it.
Yeah, you can step out of it.
That's true.
You can kind of just, it's like almost like sitting there in a little bubble.
Third
You
person
kind of see
kind of
things
view.
that are happening
Yeah.
and then
The eye
around
of the
and
hurricane.
people are over here doing this thing and people are over here doing that thing and you're just kind of watching and you're like, well, it doesn't really affect me too much because I'm not real stressed out about it. And even though it affects me directly, it's still not going to get stressed out because you know what? It'll all take care of itself anyways.
It's kind of like being in a third person view video game where you can back off and you can see the whole big picture. You're like, oh, okay, well, it's not that bad.
When you're in the middle of it, it kind of
You're like,
sucky. But when you're out on the edges and the outskirts, you're like, oh, it's
look at it. So
momentary.
keep that peace. Just receive it. Think about that. Think about his peace this week, this month, this year, this decade, this lifetime. Think about that and share it. And remember, you can literally say, "My peace I give to you." I can give you my peace, and I'm not out in it. It's one of those cases where when you divide, it multiplies, because it divides evenly between the two, and so then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, here, you have this piece. Well, I still have the same amount of peace I had, and you have the amount of peace that I had, if you accept it. So I can give you my peace, and it multiplies.
Loaves of fishes.
It divides and multiplies. It's just kind of weird.
Split it and have more for everybody.
Yeah. And the more you do that, the more you have. So when you find yourself in that struggle because somebody's being a dork, I'm using a nice word, or you find yourself in that struggle because stuff's not being done the way it should be, or the time frame isn't going the way you expect it to, or people aren't doing what you want them to do, or the world's spinning in the wrong direction when you think it should spin the other way. Whatever. You find yourself in those situations. Look who you can give peace to. Because if you're just holding on to peace, then eventually it's going to go stale. But if you give peace, then you're always going to have fresh peace. Does that make sense?
It's like bread.
I feel like things go smoother when you're not focusing on yourself.
Bread.
Well, that's true too.
So the friendship bread.
When you
Friendship.
So if you're
focus
looking
more on
at
trying
Crazy
to
monkey bread.
focus more on
spread,
sharing
give,
peace with
share,
others,
yeah.
then your situation's not going to look nearly as bad.
Well, I mean, you're not focusing on it too, so God can kind of
Right.
do what He needs to do.
Yeah, because a lot of
Without you
times it's like
nitpicking.
it's like that. I can remember one time when I was little.
God, what about this? God, what about this?
I was in kindergarten, so 5, almost 6. Stepped on a honeybee,
No.
got stung, had the stinger in my foot. It hurt. I was allergic to bee stings. My foot swelled up like this. My dad was going to take the stinger out. I was like, no, it'll hurt. No, it'll hurt. No, it'll hurt. And he's like, look at that over there. And I'm like, look at what? And he's like, okay, I'm done. I'm like, what? You're done? What do you mean you're done? But it was really going to hurt. And he's like, no, I'm done. It's okay. And I was like, wait, let me see. It's not there anymore. So sometimes God wants us to look at something else, and the really painful thing that needs to be done can be taken care of without us even being aware of it. And other times, we're like, God, I've got this, I have this owie, this boo-boo right here, and I really need you to take care of it. And He's like, I'll take care of it. And you're like, but I got this, it really hurts, guys. It's really bad. It's really hurting bad. I need you to take care of this. And He's like, yeah, I'll take care of it as soon as I'm done doing this surgery on your kidneys. But he's letting us focus on that thing over there while He's actually working on
Probably
something.
brain surgery.
He's doing brain surgery, and we're like, but I have an owie right here. And he's like, yeah, as soon as I'm done doing this brain surgery,
That'll just clear
we'll
up on
deal
its
with
own
it.
because the pain's coming from the
as soon as we're done with that, I'll take care of it. It's all right. You just keep me informed about that situation. And we're like, but God, it's really bad. And He's like, that's all right. As soon as I take care of this, bleeding artery here, we'll take care of that scratch. Because sometimes we don't recognize our worst injuries,
go into shock.
our worst problems, our worst pain. We don't see it, and it's probably a good thing. So we see this little thing, we're like, Maybe it's a bad example, but it's similar in scope. Has anybody ever seen the movie Major Pain? Damon Wayans? If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's really good. But at the beginning of it, there's this guy who got shot in the leg, or broke his leg. I think he fell down and broke his leg. And he's like, you want me to take your mind off that pain? And he's like, yes, Sarge. So he grabs his pinky and goes, and breaks it. He's like, my finger! Just not thinking about your leg. I mean, fortunately, God doesn't do that to us. But, sometimes
He redirects our attention.
He redirects our attention that way. So it did take his mind off of his leg.
Right.
My leg is gone.
So
It would hurt more.
it might. Anyways, so does anybody else have any feedback about peace? About perfect peace?
There's always going to be situations that are going to come up that are going to require it. You're never going to get to the point where you don't have any situation in your life where you don't need peace.
We always have to have peace.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you live in a perfect, tranquil
You still got
existence, something's going to happen at some point in time. Where you're
Yeah.
gonna have to have
If you don't
peace.
share it, it'll just get stale.
Yeah.
So you got to pass it on.
It's an amazing feeling
It is.
to experience that.
So,
And it's free.
and it is a beacon. When you have perfect peace, it shines out to the rest of the world, and they'll either be drawn to it or run they'll be like, I hate you because you have peace. And it's like, all right, you can hate me, but here, have some of my peace.
Right.
Here, you can have some too. They're like, I don't want your peace.
No.
But eventually, if you keep giving them peace, there's like, they'll either accept it or they'll run away.
Right.
And then someone else will hear about it. So.
Jesus, we thank you and praise you. Thank you for your peace, Lord. Thank you for all you're doing, all you're going to do. I pray that you'll help us in all areas and all ways. Lord, give us, help us to be able to share your peace. Lord, help us to be able to give it out freely. Lord, help us not to try to hoard it because it won't help anyway. So I thank you and praise you and bless you. I lift up your holy name. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.